All right. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Unity Temple of Truth. I feel like I'm in church today with that rendition of This Is the Day. I am so blessed and honored that Dr. Pulley invited me to be here today. And I so loved Lynette's warm welcome. And I want to thank each of you who took time out of your busy schedules. You could have chosen to be any place else today, but you chose to be here. And so I just want to acknowledge you and just ask you to give yourselves a big hand. Give yourselves a big hand. Awesome. Well, I'm not going to stay on the stage too long because I love to, mingle, right? So if you don't mind, I'm going to join you out here. Great. Yeah. So I might forget some of my notes, but you'll bear with me. So I'll just put them here so I can keep up with it. But the idea is, I was last here in March. I spoke for the women's ministry, and I so enjoyed it. I had an awesome time. There's some people who are here today who were part of that presentation, and I'm glad that I had the chance to do that. And so today, I know I'm speaking for the couples ministry, and the theme that they asked me to speak on is prayer and partnerships. And when I went to Spirit to ask guidance on what to speak about today, I got improving your relationships with love. So my topic is improving your relationships with love. Everybody say that with me. Improving your relationships with love. How many of you are in a committed relationship? Awesome. How many of you want to be in a committed relationship? Excellent. How many of you are in a committed relationship with God? So this message applies to all of us. How many of you are committed to improving your relationships?
There we go.
Excellent. Excellent. So as we talk today, I'm just going to invite us, before we get into the meat of it, to just take a pause and set an intention for this time together. All right? So let's just take a pause here. And just take a deep breath where you are. And as you breathe in, I have some nervous energy coming through, and part of that is I care so much that I want you to get what is yours to receive today. So I just invite God's presence and God's Spirit to speak through me. And that as I speak today, that each and every one of you who showed up today will receive what's yours. Some of you will receive a miracle. Some of you will receive a breakthrough. Some of you will receive a praise. Whatever it is, whatever is yours, take it and leave the rest. So as you breathe out, I invite you to let go of any fear, any doubt, any worry, any distraction, any concern of what happened 10 or 20 minutes or 30 minutes ago. Any concern about what's going to come in a half hour, in an hour, or when you leave here, let it all go. It's not important. Be fully here now for your blessing. And just allow yourself to sit with that for a moment. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes and come back to this space, this time, for this blessing right now. All right. So, I love to start with something funny. Is that okay with you? Yes. All right. So there is the story of a pastor and his wife who was a music ministry leader, and they were having some relationship issues. We're talking about relationship today. So they were having some relationship issues, and it was starting to bleed over into the worship service. So the minister, one week, he decided to preach on being willing to change. And the music ministry leader responded with, "I shall not be moved." The following week, he decided to preach on giving, and her response in music was, "Jesus paid it all." The following week, he decided to preach on gossip. And her response was, I love to tell the story. So he was getting very frustrated and decided that he was going to quit. So this particular week, he came to church and he said, Jesus brought me here and Jesus is taking me out. And her musical response was, what a friend we have in Jesus. I really, you know, it's funny to think of that, but when I think about the implications of it, as funny as it is, you and I know that sometimes when we're not in good relationship, it can bleed into many different areas of our lives. It can sabotage our success. Am I right? Yes. Can I get a witness? You all with me? Yes. We're in church, right? Yes. And we need to speak the truth and set ourselves free. Right. And so whether or not it's within your personal relationship or it's in your church relationship, I'm inviting us to take a look at it, because very often we're praying for God to send us the right church, the right person, the right whatever. Can I get a witness? I want you to be with me, be fully present with me today. Sometimes we're praying for that right person, that right situation, that right condition, that right church. And when it shows up, the bigger challenge for us is, how do we keep it? Right? How do we grow it? How do we maintain it? How do we not sabotage? You with me? Yeah. Because whatever the situation, whatever the relationship, it's the same, we go through the same drill. It's our stuff that comes up. And I'm going to speak about mine personally, because you're hearing the success in my introduction, right? You heard a very successful story. But you haven't heard the failures. And it's those that are really important to help us to grow. Am I right? Yes. Yeah, so I want to share with you truthfully that, you know, I've been divorced for like many years, several years, I should say, before I met my husband. And I remember that it was a crisis. My mom was actually dying. And I prayed, I said, God, please don't let my mother die. My mother was my next of kin. Don't let my mother die before I find my significant other. And so my mom got into remission, and I was led to South Korea, and there he was. He was from California. He had never been to the countries that I'd lived in, and I had never been where he'd been. And so we found ourselves there in South Korea teaching, and so we became partners. And it was clear that he was my intended other. He arrived 6 weeks before my mom passed. 6 weeks. So I knew I had gotten signs, and it had led me there, and I felt victorious. But then what happened was the relationship got serious, and as he was talking marriage, I started to get cold feet. Right? Can you relate to that? Anybody else here? I thought, I don't know. All of a sudden, I don't know. What was coming up? My head trash. The stuff that from my childhood, right? I was abandoned. My father was not in my life. He was a teenager, and he just wasn't allowed to participate. He wasn't old enough to participate. So that's a big issue of mine, right? Abandonment. Can anybody relate to that? Yeah. And so that came up. In addition to that, I'd been married before and it didn't work out. So who's to say this is going to work? And so I didn't want to get married. I was afraid at that time, and it was coming up. And so I saw all kinds of things going wrong. It was going chaotic and crazy. Can you relate to sometimes when you start questioning whether or not something is right for you, all of a sudden it looks chaotic and crazy and uncertain and unstable, and you're like, this can't be it. So now I was saying, God, this isn't it. This is not it. God, what happened? I misunderstood. I read the signs wrong. Can you relate to that? Anybody else here? Yeah. So I was in that space, and as I prayed, I said, God, I need your help. I really need to know if this is it. Give me a sign. I got tons of signs, and all of the signs pointed, yes, this is the person that you're supposed to be with. And it's important that you work through whatever your issues are so that you can actually grow your relationship. And so today, I'm inviting you to take a look at your stuff, your little issues that can stand in the way of not just your personal relationship, but your church relationship, right? How you partner with other people. Am I making a mark here? Yes. Is this making sense? Yeah, because those are some of the things that are going to make a difference in the improvement and the growth of your personal relationship, your church relationship, your career, your business. All relationships can be impacted when you're not taking a look. So I'm taking a look. I'm asking you to improve your relationship with love today. And we know 1 Corinthians 13, 4-7 talks about love. But I'm going to give you a different spin on love today. Are you open to that? Yeah. All right. So we're going to start with the letter L. And the letter L is for listen. The letter L is for listen. The letter L is for listen. You know, there is a saying that we have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason, right? So we must talk half as much as we listen. We need to listen. Ernest Hemingway actually says it this way. He says, most of us listen to reply, not to understand. Am I making sense here? Most of us listen to reply, not to understand. But the point of it is we need to listen to understand. Listen to understand. Now, I will tell you that I am a trained social worker and counselor and a coach. So I know how to listen professionally. Anybody else here can relate to that? I know how to listen professionally. My clients feel understood. But in my personal relationship, I'm going to tell you another fail. My ego gets in the way ever so often, and I don't listen to understand. I'm listening to reply. And so he says this, and I say something back because I didn't even hear what he said. So, can you relate to that? All the time, this is what happens. I'm not afraid to tell you, it happens all the time. And so what I'm sharing is that we've had to see a counselor on a fairly, ongoing basis to help us clear out some of the stuff that's not working. And it's perfectly all right to see a counselor. All right, guys? Yeah, it's a lot of us, right? We have issues with seeing counselors. It's good to see a counselor. When things are not working, bring in an objective, neutral third party to help you sort it out. All right? Yes. So I've seen a counselor, and one of the key things is to listen. Listen to understand. Don't listen to reply. And don't allow yourself to be going back and forth too much. But anyways, I'm getting carried away here, and I've got a couple more points to cover. So L is for listen. The O is for optimism. Be optimistic. Be optimistic about your relationship. Be optimistic about your relationship, and whether that's your personal relationship or your relationship here in the church or your business or your career, be optimistic. Be optimistic. It's important for you to have a sense of optimism. It really, really makes a difference to your relationship if you can see it as working. So the story is told of a traveler who found himself in a town, and he came upon 2 stonecutters, and the stonecutters were working really, really hard, or what he thought was really hard, and he decided to stop and ask what they were doing. And he said to the first man, he said, "What are you doing?" And the man replied, he said, "I am miserable at this job. Absolutely miserable. This is back-breaking work. This is so tough, and they don't pay me enough for me to do this." He said, "I can't wait to get out of here. All I'm doing here is cutting stones, and I can't wait to get out of here." And the other man, he replied with a smile on his face and a gleam in his eyes. And he said, "Sir, I know you don't see it yet, but I am here to build a magnificent cathedral. I am here to build a magnificent cathedral. And I want my sons and their sons and many generations to come and admire and enjoy what I've built. I want that to settle in for you." Many of us here, or in our relationship or in church, are cutting stones. and we complain, right? Do you understand what I'm saying? We complain about how hard it is, and sometimes in a relationship it does get hard, right? Sometimes it feels like there's just a grind and you're just going through the motions and it doesn't feel good and all you're doing is paying the bills and you're not really seeing the fruits of your labor. So it feels like all you're doing is cutting stones. But how about you change direction and change your mind about what you're doing and create a vision, a shared vision together. And whether that's here in the church, right, at Unity Temple of Truth, that vision of growing and building this community, whatever it is, you want to get on the same page with each other. Are you all with me? Yeah, you're a little silent now. Yes? If you're with me, I really want you to give a round of applause for that, because I think that's an important piece. Get on the same page. Thank you. Yeah, get on the same page with each other. Get on the same page in your relationship. Do create a relationship goal. And I'm telling you this because I've had to do it. That's what happens when things don't quite work the way you expect them to work. Part of the reason I have a story, a personal testimony today, is because there are times when things haven't worked and we've had to see a counselor. And one of the things that a counselor suggested to us was that we create a relationship goal, a shared vision of what it is that we're building together. And that makes a big difference, because then you get on the same page. You're not cutting stones anymore. You're building a magnificent cathedral. You're building something for generations. And a relationship, when a relationship works beautifully, it's something that everybody is inspired by. Am I right? And it goes on, and it creates so much. It creates a legacy for the generations to come. So it's so key for us to do that, right? And it doesn't mean that you're going to do it perfectly. It doesn't mean that. What it means is that you continue to try, and you continue to better your best, and you continue to grow yourself. There is a saying that says, when you're challenged in your relationship, it's time at that point for you to either learn a new skill or to develop yourself or do something different. There's always room for improvement. And when things aren't working, when you're challenged, it's not time to quit. Can I get a witness? Yes. Thank you. When things are not working, it's not time to quit. It's time for you to learn a new skill. Develop yourself some more. See a counselor. Grow through some of your issues, because sometimes those past issues, they keep following us, right? It's like baggage that we're carrying like monkeys on our backs, and we need to offload them in order for us to travel freely and travel light in our new situation, relationship, what have you. So we've covered L. L is for listen, and O is for optimism. V is for validation. V is for validation. V is for validation. Validate your spouse. Validate your, your church, your fellow member or whoever. Validate your colleague. Validate. It's so important to validate. Each of us has a need inside of us, a really great need to be heard, to be listened to. We have a need to feel valued, to feel that we matter, to feel that we're important. Do you all have that need? I know I do. And so we live in this really crazy world where, we're all so busy, and the busier we get, the less we feel validated. Can you relate? Yeah, and so it's so important that when you are with your significant other, that you give them a chance to feel validated. Let them feel that you hear them, that what they're saying is important. And so how validation works, again, this is from my own life experience, right? Not from the professional, but from my personal life. How this works is, he says, ABC, XYZ. I listen to understand, and then I repeat. I actually summarize what he says, and I said, I heard you say XYZ, ABC, or maybe I say XYZ, cat. And he said, no, that's not what I said. You got the first part right. But the other part I didn't get. I can't even tell you. I'm glad you're relating to that. I can't tell you how many times I thought I got it. I thought I heard it, right? But then when I repeat and summarize what he said, it wasn't that. How many of you can relate to that? We think we understand, right? We think we get it, but it's not so. So it's important that we validate, right? Repeat back, summarize, because it's going to be helpful to your partner to be understood, and it will also help you. And what happens is, since we've been using this validation technique, it's become easier to relate to him. I feel heard because he validates me. He's not just, rushing into the next thing, and he feels heard because I'm also feeling like I'm understanding better, because sometimes I run and assume that this is what he means. And that sometimes it's so far off the mark. And where did that even come in? It's all my head trash, right? It's my stuff. It's my issue. It's my abandonment issue. It's my whatever that's coming to the surface. And so it shows up as this thing that all of a sudden is going to create an argument. But once you validate, oh, it really isn't what I thought it was. And all of a sudden there's a sense of relief because we validate each other. So I'm going to invite you to validate. How many people are going to try validating? Excellent, excellent. So we covered L for listen, and you're going to listen to understand or to reply. Which one? Listen. Listen to understand. O is for optimism. V is for validation. So we have one more left, and that one is E. And E is elevate. 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 Everybody say elevate. 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 Yeah, elevate. Do this. Elevate. 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 Lift up. Elevate means to lift up, right? So what I'm inviting you to is to lift up your partner, lift up your church, lift up your community, lift up your business, lift up your career in a way that can allow it to grow. Many of us, like I said, we come to these relationships, we think we fought hard and we prayed enough and we brought it in, and then we just sit back and expect it to grow on its own. Can you relate to that? Yes. Yeah, we're not doing the work to, not to maintain it, but now I'm taking you a step further. I want you to elevate it. Don't just make it so-so and ordinary, right? Make it extra special. And how you can do that, you can do that a couple of ways. The first one is to make your relationship a priority. Make your relationship a priority. Make your relationship a priority. The second is to speak positive words about your partner. Speak positive words about your partner and to your partner. So many times I've observed, I'm not generally somebody to talk badly about my partner or so on, but I've observed people in my circle who they speak negatively of their spouse or partner. And it doesn't bode well when we don't speak positively. So speak positively about them and also to them. So my bigger issue is to speak positively too, right? So I'm inviting you to do that. And the other piece that I'm going to invite you to take a look at is, what are you doing to create that extra excitement in your relationship? There is a study that shows that people who have great relationships, there's one key ingredient in that relationship. A study shows, excuse me, relationships that are great have one key ingredient. It transcends faith. And relationships that are quote unquote bad are lacking in this particular ingredient. Do you all have a sense of what that might be? Anybody want to guess? Respect? Trust? Not quite. Huh? Love? God? It's fascinating. You're all talking about stuff that I would have guessed it was that too, but I found this to be different. It's fun. F-U-N. Fun. A lot of people, when you know, when you see relationships that are working great, wouldn't you say that people in those relationships are having fun? Yeah, and when there is no fun in the relationship, it's pretty lousy. There's a story. I'm rushing on. Am I rushing a little too much, you think? This is good? Yeah, I'm feeling like, oh my gosh, I have to be on time and to time. So that's the thing. I practice to time. So I'm trying to make sure I get all of it in. So bear with me. So the story is told of a couple who went to a marriage counselor because they had just been married for 2 months and they were having a really hard time. They were not enjoying it. And already they were thinking of quitting at 2 months in. Part of it was they were so busy working 2 jobs, feeling stressed about finances, and having a sense that even when they did talk, all they did was argue, right? Lots of arguments going on because things weren't going so great. So the marriage counselor suggested that they go home and have a pillow fight. And interestingly, the following week they came back and the counselor asked them, well, how did it go? And they were a little sheepish and they said, well, it was awkward. It was very, very awkward. And the only reason that we bothered to continue doing it was because it was an assignment. But they said the more we continued, the more fun it got. And because it became fun, it broke the ice. And then we did something we haven't done in months. We had some intimate time together. And so, you know, fun is that element that can make a difference in your relationship. And I assure you, I've tried some of these things and they work. So find things, right? 10 things I love about you. 10 things I love about you. You know, a game. Do some games. Do some different kinds of things. What's another thing that I want to suggest? 10 things I love about you. Make him king for you know, an hour or an evening, right? Or make her queen for the day or whatever. But find little things that can make a difference. Does that make sense to you? I know I don't have a